My secret, just do something that ain't nobody ever done before, but make it sound like something that's always been there forever.
Welcome to This Filipino American Life, a podcast that explores the nuanced experiences of Filipinos in the United States at iba pa. My name is Brian Carpio, and I'm joined by my fellow hosts,
Joe Bernardo,
Elaine Delalis, and
Mike.
Producer Mike.
One too many there, Elaine.
Got an extra one. Hey guys, how's it going?
It's
Good.
going.
It goes.
We are in the midst of Filipino American History Month. And so what a good way to have an episode about Filipino American stuff. Oh,
I mean, all of our episodes are technically part of Filipino American history, right?
Oh, you want to hear something trippy? Someone told me that our podcast is Filipino American history, so we're creating it.
oh.
So,
Is it Filipino American history or Filipino American heritage?
history? Because it's October and the Filipino American National Historical Society. I continue the sentence. I don't know, but they figured it out.
Declared this as Philippine Heritage Month.
No.
No. Filipino American History Month. Yes.
Right on.
Like the ghost of Don Mabalon is going to
Haunt me.
haunt you.
Well, on this episode, Elaine, do we have a TFAL?
Yes, their TFAL. The episode is Charlene Roque Washington.
Oh.
Charlene.
No, I don't know.
No.
Roque Washington, DC.
At vicinity.
And
Washington. Thank you, Charlene, for being a Patreon and for being our TPAL, for supporting us. So if you want to be like Charlene and be cool, support us, be our Patreon.
And actually, like for our Patreons this month, we're going to be sharing a special thing that we did with Geneva and Hi-Fi Kitchen, right? Like not that long ago, a week ago, maybe.
Yes.
That is not going to be released as an episode, not going to be on YouTube, only for the people who are there and for our Patreon. So there are incentives and bonuses.
Neither confirm nor deny whether or not there was drinking.
I can confirm it.
Yeah, we can very, very much confirm. There was very much drinking.
There's a lot of drinking, and I was drunks.
Yeah.
But yes, if you want to join and be a Patreon of TFAL, then you have access to those shows and more.
Yeah.
Yes.
So do that. And then also I wanted to see if Joe, do we have a voicemail?
Yes, we do. We have a voicemail.
We have completion today. Nice.
Stupid. Here it is.
Hi, TFAL. I'm just calling to wish you guys a happy Filipino American History Month. I'm spending my weekends making ukoy and lumpia so I can trick my coworkers into listening to me talk about Filipino American history. I was just wondering, when we talk about Filipino American History Month, do we include the Philippines during the time it was actually a U.S. territory? In hearing what you guys think about that. Love your show. You guys have a great month.
Thank you.
Thank you, caller.
Did they say their name or no?
No.
Oh,
They didn't.
okay,
Some
caller.
people do that. They don't say their names.
Thanks, anonymous caller.
So,
Great
what do you
question.
think of that question?
I
kinda
say yes. I did get a little cut off, so I'm just going to say yes to whatever the question was.
The question was in Filipino American when we talk about Filipino American history, do we include the time when the Philippines was and then it got cut off? U.S. territory, I think. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, I think you talk about Philippine. For my opinion, again, Filipino American History Month, we should talk about kind of the events and kind of the historical events and kind of movements that really shape kind of our presence and kind of current lives here in America. But I think, at least my opinion is, you have to talk about America and the Philippines as an American colony, Philippine-American War. I think that's all part of it. There's a reason why there are Filipinos in America in such large numbers, and a large part happens to be because the United States was in the Philippines first, and you have to talk about that history.
What Joe said.
To avoid that would be to ignore history in Filipino American History Month.
Yeah.
So it's not just about the heritage, huh?
No.
Dawn's gonna haunt you now, Ryan. I don't even think you've met Dawn. She's gonna haunt you.
Oh man. Well, thank you for Anonymous for leaving a voicemail. That's awesome. And I'm hungry because I want some okoi. So
I know.
Anyway, right?
Can you please call back and share your okoi recipe?
I was all focused on the food.
Go to the store and buy some okoi.
Like, where's she going with this? Ooh, okoi, lumpia. Where's she go? Oh, okay. Question about history. That's cool. I want the food. But anyway, on today's episode, I'm so happy to have our guest later on, Dr. Lorenzo Barrio, to talk about choreographing in color, a book that he has released and wrote. And before we get into talking with Lorenzo, I wanted to talk to the group about dance in general. And I'm looking particularly at Joe. And just your experience with
hip hop dancing, though, right?
With hip hop dancing,
hip hops,
the apostrophe hip hop,
the new hip hops. If you know what your experience has been growing up with hip hop dance, do you like it? Do you like dancing the hip hops?
I don't know. I for me, I like dancing at a party or a wedding or stuff like that. And like, growing up, like I would try to. I remember my sister's boyfriend used to teach me how to do the Running Man and Roger Rabbit, and RoboCop, Cabbage Patch, all those kind of dance moves. But that's different from like choreographed dance and like a dance crew. Like I never been part of it. When I was in college, I was involved in the Filipino club, and then they would have what they call urban, which is kind of the modern dance crew, whatever, of the Filipino club. And to be honest with you, I thought they were all stuck up.
Wow.
Oh my God. My headphones almost came out.
Hot take.
Why?
No, I think individually, I had friends in them. I had individually, I thought they were cool. Like I had friends who were part of it, but I think as a group, like they had this aura where like they were just too cool for everybody. They're too cool for school.
Isn't that most things though?
Like I guess.
Like I mean, like there's any kind of like I'm sure, for example,
social
like I was never in
hierarchy.
yeah, but I was never in the Greek system, right? But we knew folks who were in the Greek system. But looking overall at the Greek system, you're like, they're all stuck up.
Wow.
Just kidding. Look at Mike. I'm just kidding. No, but I mean, you can. I'm saying you can fill in the blank with when it comes to like a hierarchy.
Like
but I'm wondering why particularly that group maybe, or
I don't know. For me, they would. It's kind of bad, but I'm just those people. No.
Others.
No, I felt like they didn't care about the whole production of a PCN, and they just wanted to perform and show off. And they would, after they would perform, they would just leave practice and like not care about what happened in the skit and kind of the message that we were talking about.
You're welcome.
Yeah, right. And it was kind of like it kind of undergirded my perception of them. Dude, but I am friends with a lot of them, and I know they're good people and stuff like that. But like, it was college. It was kind of like high schoolish in a sense. So that was my perception back then.
Right.
The Cabo Modern folks were like the top of the social hierarchy. I'll be real about it in terms
Were
of
they though? I didn't know any of them, so
Oh, whatever, Mike. You weren't a part of the world, Mike. You weren't a part of the Filipino world.
No, to Mike, the spoken word artists were the half of the heap.
But so speaking of that, would you say it was different if it wasn't that dance group? I'm sure there was other dance crews that weren't urban or modern. Were they cool? Like there was probably I don't know, lyrical dancers or
no, because like Cabo Modern tryouts were well beyond when PCN tryouts were. So Cabo Modern tryouts, because like the way
under other kind of entities,
it's a whole other because they had their squad determined well in advance before PCN because they had to have a team created for all of the dance competitions. So like. Right. They were bonded a lot earlier, and like they could only do Cabo Modern, like in terms of like being a part of a dance suite at Irvine. When I was there, you could only do that one. So even if you wanted to do a cultural dance, if you were in the group, you technically weren't allowed. So it created a division, right? Because it's like, well, what if you did want to do Iggs, or at the time where I was there, it was called Igorots, so Iggs. You couldn't because you were committed to Cabo Modern. You could only do that.
So but kind of like by its nature, it's all elitist.
It wasn't really
exclusive. No, but to be honest, that shit was hard, dude. Trying to do like all those choreographed moves and all that stuff.
That's probably why it's elitist.
Oh, yeah.
Because yes, I mean, the people that put the work in there are probably really good, and you know, you can tell that it's not like choreographing like a debut cotillion.
I mean, it is. But
sorry, Lito. I know you're a really good.
I feel like it is, but it's like to 100 million. Like it's so amped, right? I mean, and then like when we were in college, you know, only like 2 years ago, like the competition and whatnot, like it was taken so seriously, and then like since then it's transitioned. Like now there's like, So You Think You Can Dance, America's Best Dance Crew, World of Dance. Like it's all of the aspirations that people I knew back then. Like I know that for a fact. Like being able to see it on TV is such a big deal, right? And like like even my cousin was in one of these shows. Like he was in America's Got Talent because he was in Six Step, a dance crew, like it's a dance crew, like doing all these things. But that dance crew was not attached to a college, but it competed at like dance competitions that modern dance groups would. But the question is, did we do them? And frankly, no, because I am not graceful enough to do.
Me and Elaine do the diamond cha-cha together.
Yeah. Very poorly.
I don't think any of us have done any like hip hop choreography or like been part of it. I don't do it.
Like in a dance crew, no. In a dance class, yeah. I've done that.
Oh, okay.
I sucked. I was terrible.
I think I probably knew people who were in dance crews. I'm sure Joe and Elaine and Mike. I'm sure you guys had friends in dance crews.
Oh, yeah.
How do you know what they? Yeah.
Some underground ones. I had friends who were like,
it's hard to dance. It's so hot underground.
Is it like in Zoolander where they would have like these underground battles?
In this.
On the walk-off? You're saying the dance?
What? Oh, shoot. What was the name of the movie about like dance crew and the
Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles?
No, the kid.
Step Up?
Yeah. Is it Step Up
Part 2?
Step Up.
Where the kid has to go to, he got shipped to Atlanta, right?
Okay.
And then he joined like some dance crew. No, it's Step Up or...
I feel like it's Step Up.
Listeners are going to totally like
they're yelling at us.
Yeah. What's wrong with you? You don't know that movie?
It's not Save the Last Dance? Just kidding.
No. Or what's his name? Chris. He dies in the beginning.
Oh, great! Spoiler alert.
Anyways.
The Mighty Ducks.
Yeah. there are tons, all these dance crews, this whole scene, looking at America's Best Dance Crew, all the shows.
You got served? Something served.
Maybe.
So.
Someone email me or email us and yell at us, and maybe you could send a voicemail. But in general, this whole scene, you will notice that there are always tons and tons and tons of Filipinos that are involved with this. It's been a big phenomenon for the last since the 70s, I think. We are going to talk to a professor who's going to talk more about that phenomenon, why it is. You got served?
Because you got served.
Okay. She put in the chat the Wikipedia article. It's
gonna annoy me. I'm pretty sure it's served.
Sorry, I'm looking at the Wikipedia article now, and
it
no,
starred
it's not. You got
Marquise. It's high art. Are you sure?
No. Ay, nako, sis Maria.
It's probably Step Up. I just looked up. I googled dance movies.
Footloose, Lambada, Dirty Dancing, The Forbidden Dance.
No, it's not Step Up.
Honey, with Jessica Alba,
with the basketball moves. I watched that movie, dude. Leave me alone.
Chris Brown is in it, and he dies in the beginning of the movie.
Chris Brown movie. Dies.
Oh my God! Are we really gonna? Okay.
Stop the yard.
Stomp yard. Yes.
The yard.
Stomp the yard.
Stomp the yard. Okay. Anyways,
God.
So we are,
quality content.
There are tons of Filipino Americans who are in these kind of hip hop dancing scenes, and we're gonna talk to Ryan's old friend, right?
Yeah, we went to school together.
Lorenzo Barrio, who wrote a book about Filipinos in hip hop dancing, and he's gonna talk about kind of the stereotypes and how those things are debunked. For example, you've heard the stereotype of Filipinos as natural dancers, right? Filipinos are just we're good at mimicking, right? You've heard of those, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think Lorenzo Barrio does a good job of kind of debunking those theories and really historicizing it, or kind of putting the phenomenon of Filipinos in hip hop dancing in a good context. And I think that's we're going to talk about that later. But we do have other questions, right? Or other kind of topics to discuss. Malambot ng katawan. What does that mean?
No, so I wanted to ask the group, malambot ang katawan, like, have you ever heard that expression before? And I think, when I was growing up, so literally speaking, malambot ang katawan means like soft body. And I think I heard it recently, and I was like, oh my gosh, I haven't heard that term used in a long time. And it was like, kind of like an auntie who was kind of critiquing the dance movements of someone as very feminine, and like the way they move is very feminine. It was a guy that was dancing. It goes, oh, malambot ang katawan. So it's really a description of like the ability to move in a kind of like a soft, quote unquote, soft manner, and how that's kind of like associated with a dance. So if you were, just in general, if you're a kid, if you heard, oh, malambot ang katawan, in relation to dance or not in relation to dance, like how would you feel about that if you're a guy? And I think growing up, it was I don't know if it was it's usually done in a complimentary way, but also in a way that says, you're a quote unquote dancer. You dance.
So it wasn't done pejoratively, right? It wasn't said pejoratively.
Not really. It was done in a way to say that someone is good at dancing or has the ability to like gembot or sway their hips, right? Because a lot of times, we talk about this as a natural thing. Sometimes it's the way people express whether or not you're going to be good at dancing, right? If you have rhythm, if you have the ability to sway, and all that. So it was complimentary. As a term, but it's also like literally speaking, it kind of connotes some things about dance. as being very feminine, for example.
Yeah. I mean, like looking at dance moves and rhythms and movements as having more meaning than, just looking good, right? Like when you
Right.
talk about malambot ng katawan means it has a feminine connotation,
Right.
right?
Right.
And I think, our guest speaker is going to talk more about that. He talks a lot about it in his book.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Cool. And we're looking forward to it. So please, join us and talking to Lorenzo. Just kick back your shoes or whatever. Relax your feet.
Your shoes.
Kick out your shoes. And relax your feet. And talk dance with us and talk choreography with Dr. Lorenzo Barrio right after this break.
Hey guys,
Hey, Elaine.
What's up, Elaine?
did you know that we have TFALs?
Yes.
What's a TFAL?
I mean, what?
TFALs are our Patreons. They joined at patreon.com/TFAL podcast and they support us every month.
Oh, is that what you announced like one of our episodes if there's a T-Pal of the episode?
Correct.
So those people are Patreons?
yes.
Cool.
Really? I actually thought they were random.
This is Are you serious?
Are you serious?
Mike is actually serious.
Wow, I'm learning something today.
Yeah.
And also all of you right now.
So if you want to be a TFAL and surprise Mike, join us at patreon.com/TFAL podcast.
But not only do you get to shout out on the episode, you get cool things as a TPAL, correct?
Ooh,
Ooh.
like what kind of cool things, Ryan?
Like what? Like
Sometimes you get free giveaways.
oh, like what? Like a sticker?
Yes, like our logo sticker.
What?
Or our new TFAL Hearts OPM sticker that is inspired by Chicken Joy Division.
And you also get some free books if we get them from the authors. We'll definitely set aside some for our Patreons.
And pictures of me.
I
I'm
could
just kidding.
actually,
No,
I
I'm
will.
What
Now that-
exclusive Polaroids? Not that kind of Patreon, guys.
Numbered.
That's totally going to be a thing now. I'm going to take pictures of Ryan and give them to the Patreons.
But not only do you get all that, you also get some shout outs or say in some episodes.
That's true.
We'll get your opinions on certain subjects in upcoming episodes. And we'll also, as a new thing, we'll send you some blooper reels of TFAL. Only for the Patreons.
Only for the Patreons?
Only for the Patreons.
Oh, man. If you want some laughs, be a Patreon today.
Lewds, but no nudes.
But if subscribing monthly to TFAL is not your thing, maybe you can support us by giving us a Ko-fi.
Ko-fi? What's that?
It's a one-time donation to this Filipino American life.
Cool.
Yes, so either do Patreon or Ko-fi. What's the website for Ko-fi, Elaine?
Ko-fi.com/TFAL.
Ko-fi, ko-fi.com/TFAL podcast.
Yes. So thank you very much.
And we are back. Hey, we're back. Thank you for
Welcome
listening
back.
Welcome back.
to our ad. Welcome back. And please support us however you can. Little or big. We don't mind, especially during this time. So we're happy to get all your support, all those who are Patreons. We truly appreciate it. And for those who are looking for a way to contribute to us, please check out our website, this FilipinoAmericanLife.com, and spread the word and get us into your subscription for Patreon. We give fun stuff to people who are our Patreons. We actually have happy hours and stuff like that, I think.
You do. Think.
Sure,
We do.
sure.
I would
But you won't really find out until you actually
anyway.
contribute.
Yeah.
Right. In any case-
Ryan was drunk at the last one.
I
He doesn't remember.
I like
Um,
that we just let Ryan go. Like none of us were gonna save him. We're like,
I know, like no one's gonna save me. But I'm so excited because of our guest today. Someone that actually know from my undergrad or his undergrad years, but we went to undergrad together. But Dr. Lorenzo Barrio, assistant professor of theater and dance at the University of Hawaii at Manoa. Lorenzo,
Hey.
welcome.
Hello. Thanks.
And
Glad to be
Lorenzo
here.
is here to talk to us about dance, but also to talk to us about his latest book, which we'll talk a little bit about in this interview, called Choreographing in Color: Filipinos, Hip Hop, and the Cultural Politics of Euphemism. So Lorenzo, thank you for doing this, for making the time. We are in Pacific time, so the future looks bright. I know you're 3 hours behind us.
Stupid.
So 3 hours from now, you're gonna see the future is bright. But I do want to welcome to our podcast. We've been wanting to talk about dance for quite some time. So thank you for being here.
It's an honor and it's a pleasure to be here and share some of my ideas and experiences with you all. You know, I'm a longtime listener, first time guest.
First time guest. Long time lurker, first time commenter.
Yeah, so hopefully somebody will be like me, like commuting and wanting to listen to a podcast and be like, oh, okay. I'll
Right
click on it.
on. Right on.
Cool. Thanks for the support.
Yeah, seriously.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, this is interesting because we're an audio medium, and then we're going to talk about dance, which is very much a visual art form. But yes, thank you so much for being here.
Which is fine. I mean, listeners out there, just close your eyes
And think of
and
Joe.
Dancing.
think of dance. Think
thought
of
you were
how
gonna
the
say-
forms.
Close your eyes and make a
Make
wish.
a wish. Yeah.
Oh man, don't get us started. But Lorenzo, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got started in dancing and in maybe in particular hip hop dancing. Give us a little bit about your background.
All right. So yeah, for me, I feel like I kind of got into dancing late in life. I was in high school. So I basically was like a latchkey kid and followed my sister to her tall flags practice. I don't know if you all remember tall flags. I think it later got called color guard. And so I ended up being in tall flags in high school because my sister was in it. And then from there, kind of, learn about the other things. We had drill, flags, and letters. And so in drill was just kind of getting co-ed and forming all male teams, quote unquote, all male teams that did street dance. And so a year after that, I auditioned and got in. And that's kind of my entryway into kind of getting more into dance, but like informally, like that's formal, but informally, like, there's garage parties in SoCal, like there's a lot of family parties and friend parties where just be like a dark garage. You have to go in and bust what you can. And so like, I remember going and feeling super nervous and just wanting to get more skills and be able to dance. And then eventually, they want you to dance for your sister's birthday. So you have to make a routine for you and your little sisters. And then you would be like the bossy person telling them that they're doing it wrong. So I kind of like got a little bit of experience in the informal and in the formal. And then ended up at Cal, there were people that were, they were choreographers for their for debuts or for, import car shows. And those kind of fed into the whole circuit at college. And that kind of like was where people kind of got their, cut their teeth. And then I got introduced to the Filipino groups that did dance. And that's the first time I did Filipino dance, actually. It wasn't until college.
Oh.
And then someone invited me to go to Culture Shock San Francisco, which later became Culture Shock Oakland. And I ended up, dancing. And it seemed like I was doing like 80 hours of dance a week and more than what I was supposed to be. I mean, more than my major.
Mm-hmm.
And I just kind of stuck as something that I wanted to have a relationship with and keep building in the community in the Bay Area. And yeah, so that's kind of, working with dance groups in Cal. There's a lot of different dance groups, right? There's like dance junta or dance junta and the movement. So everybody was kind of creating their own dance crews on campus as student organizations, and they would give you opportunities to choreograph. And it was like a really cool like ecosystem, I would say. And you would meet other people from other universities or not necessarily college students, just working professionals. And so it kind of gave me a good sense of community in the Bay Area because I was new. And I hadn't lived there before necessarily for a long time. So yeah.
Well, where did you grow up?
So I grew up in Mira Mesa. I was born in Hawaii. My parents are from the Philippines. My dad's Bicolano. My mom's from Bulacan. And so we moved shortly after to San Diego, and that's where I grew up, in Mira Mesa.
Mira Mesa. And then I think you wrote in your book that you had a rivalry. Your dance crew had a rivalry with the other Filipino dance crew from Oxnard. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, I kind of like threw it out there. There was in high school, like going to dance competitions. I don't know if y'all are y'all familiar with like drill and flag and all of those. Like, yeah,
Mike is because he's from Oxnard and he went.
Wait, are you?
But he didn't. He didn't go to Channel Islands, the school that everybody had beef with.
Oh, you're creating beef now, Lane. Oxnard, Mira Mesa.
Yeah, no, like I don't even like. I mean, it was a rival. It was like a healthy rivalry, if anything, because we were the only Filipino groups. Like it was like a sea of white drill teams, and then it was like the all Filipino guys from Mira Mesa, or the all Filipino crew, and then like it depended on the different competitions, but yeah. So every weekend you would travel to a different school, and you would compete in the spring with band. You'd do a field show, and like, it would be some kind of like, performing to Les Miserables or performing to Star Wars on the field, doing dance or flags. And then in the spring, it would be concert for dance. So then you would do your own kind of like quote unquote concert. You would have showcases and compete against other drill teams or other all male. All male was kind of more like swing dance, partner dance. I mean, co-ed was more partner dancing and swing dancing. And then all male was kind of like more street, but then they would have all female and they would have co-ed street. And so it kind of developed into like its own thing. But yeah, we would just like, it wasn't really a huge rivalry. It would just be like, oh, we see you. You guys are good. Yeah. We'll be back.
I'll see you after the competition.
It wasn't like a bring it on situation. It was more like
maybe
bring it on. It's the original bring it on.
Maybe it's because you're in the all male dance group, because I have it in my storage. I haven't finished it because I was working on a documentary about the short flags rivalry between Oxnard and the South Bay in Los Angeles. So like different schools
and
like Carson High School.
Oh, Carson, small flags.
It's like between Carson and like Channel Islands, and like the way they talk about it, it's like mad serious. And so I was like, I ain't gonna. But it's fine.
Yeah, no, I think it's one of those things where you're so stuck in your school that like it's exciting to see other schools doing things and like have this opportunity to travel. And I just remember it being such a community kind of building activity. Every week you would travel on a bus, and then you'd have your own rituals. Like you would sing, like I remember we would sing songs on the bus, like R&B slow jams at night, and like remix them. And then that became part of our like getting onto stage ritual, where we'd be like singing all of these like hyphy like or hip hop songs right before we go on stage, and that would be like our getting to attention. Right. And then I just remember it being just kind of a high school, like a sport, like they have their own prayer circles and
well, it's interesting because you did that all in high school, and then you transition it to when you were in college, because like Mike and I went to Irvine, but Mike wasn't involved with Cabo Bayan, but I was. So like,
always have to bring that up.
Always have to bring it up.
There's a story there.
I just want to bring it up. Mike wasn't involved, but I was.
You're so
okay, just as a segue, my story is that because I grew up in Oxford, surrounded by so much of that stuff, that by the time I got to Irvine, like I can escape all of the short flags and drill and dance, all the stuff. Oh no, wait, Irvine is like the epicenter of a lot of it. Oh, God. So.
Yeah, because like Irvine was like where Cabo Modern was founded, and then like the book really, it goes into what that college dance culture is like for a chapter. And I totally was having flashbacks of like Common Modern tryouts in like a parking structure, and then like going to learn the routine, even though I damn well knew that I wasn't making it. Like everybody would go to learn the dance routine because they're like, ooh, it's the new modern tryout routine, right? Let's all try. And then you go, and then you're like, what? Where do I go? From what? From 4? What? Huh? I don't understand. And then like people whittle away, and then you would just come to modern tryouts, like to actually watch the auditions. And it would be like watching modern tryouts in real life is like the baby precursor to watching So You Think You Can Dance. Or even like World of NBC World of Dance, which is hilarious to this day, and I can't watch it anymore because in my head, World of Dance, there should be a Paul Mitchell World of Dance banner in the back of the screen, because that is what all of those dance videos were like in college.
Yeah. Imagine if there was TikTok back then, and if you wanted to learn how to do a routine.
Oh,
everybody would be allowed in. I don't know.
Yeah.
Hey, Lorenzo, do you still dance?
Oh yeah, I teach a hip hop class at UH right now, which is it's interesting. It's really challenging to do it on Zoom. Like I'm sure everybody. I've listened to some of my collaborators and friends in the Philippines talking about like, oh, this is what you should like. Different techniques and pedagogical kind of things, like having 2 cameras and like one shows my feet and one shows the full body, or one in the front and one in the back. And then, it's hard just to do that. And then also look to see if people are doing things,
correctly.
Like assess their bodies too. But yeah, it's definitely something that, I kind of got into the research side because I knew that I wouldn't be able to dance forever. And so I kind of wanted to have a way to still contribute or be connected to the culture and to the community. And so I think, and I didn't want to own a dance studio. I didn't want to be an entrepreneur in that sort of sense. And that seemed like what a lot of folks were doing. But I'm not a good business person. I'm not good with money, which is why I'm in academia.
So you don't have to worry about money at all.
No. I guess the funny part is I don't like risk, but then I'm in like academia, which is like constantly in a precarious position.
Yes, you're always at risk.
So yeah, that didn't work out. But anyway, what was the question? I'm still dancing, and it's one of those things where you kind of want to keep it fresh. Like you get like everybody has a passion, and then once you make it your job, you're like, did I just kill my passion?
Right.
Or do I have to kind of transition into a new version of that passion?
Right. I totally get that.
Wait, so when you say you teach, is it like a part of the curriculum, or like,
it's a movement class, and we meet Tuesdays and Thursdays. And Tuesdays we read articles and books and like sources and have discussions. And then on Thursdays we do movement workshops.
Dang.
So like
one
of the great things about this format, or in the age of COVID, is like we've had my friend B-Girl Bea Zoom in from Manila, and then we do a B-Girl workshop, and then Diva Miyake Mugler gave an Old Way Vogue workshop like a week or two ago from London. And so it's been a great way to kind of connect folks that I've met and worked with in my research across the globe to like local Hawaii students.
That's awesome. Sorry, I had a gasp because Miyake Mugler is like one of the houses in Vogue, and like I watch Pose, and then I also binge through Legendary on HBO Max, and they highlight all the houses, like the ballroom houses. So like when he said Miyake Mugler, I was like, oh my god, that's a major house. That's amazing.
Cool. Yeah, so getting into like why you studied, Filipinos and hip hop dancing, like, why, and you're connected obviously to the culture and to the whole kind of scene. What made you want to kind of write about it and to like analyze it and write a whole book, Choreographing in Color?
Yeah, one of the main things was, I feel like when you write, you often write best when you can tell your story, or you can tell folks about your experience. And so there wasn't a book out there that kind of spoke about this. Like, I had this formative experience in college. I think a lot of folks do, with PCN or with the Filipino community or with the dance community. And, that's something that we don't necessarily see, even in ethnic studies curriculum, those stories being told, or from the perspective of a practitioner. It's often like a non-practitioner going into that community and then taking a couple classes and writing it down. But like for me, I thought it was really important to use this, like, the privilege and space of grad school to kind of work on putting it together and translating that to, and connecting sort of the artistic community, the Filipino community, and the academic community. Because, Filipinos, dance, and hip hop are three kind of forms that are delegitimized in the academy, and like they're marginalized. And so it's not like you see a lot of, it's growing, like the research on it, but especially in dance, like there's not that many hip hop dance books that go outside of the US, or that speak about like institutional racism, or like from a critical race theory perspective. So I thought it was really important to kind of put something in that kind of legitimizes it and says that it's like, you don't have to be a rapper to be a conscious hip hop artist. Yeah.
So, let's get into the book, and kind of what you write about, what you analyze, how you kind of theorize, the phenomenon of Filipinos in hip hop dancing. What would you say would be like the overall kind of elevator pitch of your book?
All right. Yeah, the overall. Okay, my book tells this story of the rise of Filipino dancers into a global phenomenon over the last 50 years. And it connects, and it looks at the influence of Black culture in Filipino culture, from starting with the Philippine-American War, and then up until more recent times with like the viral sensations of Filipino performance. And I use the euphemism, or I theorize around the euphemism as a way of thinking through like social critique, or the ways that Filipinos kind of use the codes of cultural expectation and also play outside of those expectations.
What are cultural expectations?
Good. Yeah. So I think that like, for me, like getting into dance, like I think I kind of started experiencing, there are certain stereotypes depending on where you live and what kind of situation you're in. If you're in a majority white context, or predominantly white institution, or if you're in a Filipino group, there are stereotypes about Filipino bodies. And for me, I thought, wouldn't it be great if we can kind of take apart those stereotypes, like Filipinos having natural rhythm, or being great singers naturally, or the model minority is a stereotype, or subservient wives being a stereotype, natural. Yeah. So like I base, and being heroic migrants, or like the idea of like leaving the Philippines being an act of modern heroism. Yeah. I really wanted to kind of challenge these as as not as unhealthy for like the future that we want to build with Filipinos, and kind of connect it to the laws and the policies that actually helped form these so-called positive stereotypes.
So can you talk about let's take one example of a stereotype that is kind of that people label Filipinos as. So like, for example, people say Filipinos are just naturally good dancers and singers, right? Can you talk about how it's, how that stereotype is misguided, that particular one, and also kind of dangerous?
Yeah, I think for me, I think context matters. So whenever somebody's saying like, oh, they're naturally good dancers and singers, we have to look at like what is the content, or what are they singing about, what are they dancing, and how is that being evaluated, right? So for me, like it's generally like American or Western texts that are being sung or danced, and that sort of speaks to, well, it's sort of essential. I mean, it's essentialist, right? To kind of not give credit to the work and the labor that it takes to gain those skills, first of all, like the training or the amount of hours and the resources that one puts into their craft. Two, it's like there are structures and schools and agencies that help develop talent. And so for me, like looking at specifically, let's say like folk dance, like we might say like, oh, Filipinos are like naturally good at dancing. Look at how good they are at folk dancing and whatnot. But you can actually trace like the history of folk dance and all the kind of issues that go along with it. That when you say, oh, they're naturally good at dance or at that, you're sort of erasing all of that, the power relations. Like for instance, folk dance, we know was part of the colonial project to kind of consolidate indigenous dances, and in some ways erase a lot of the indigenous dances or water them down or orientalize them, and then institute that in a physical education paradigm, right? So they were kind of seen as PE, or they were put into a PE framework, which explains why they're so popular, or why there's space for them in the institutions in the Philippines. But when we think about like combating racism or misogyny or homophobia in dance forms, there's no really room for doing that in a PE paradigm of dance, So it already like kind of structures you to think about dance as a certain way, a physical activity, calisthenics. And so that order like sort of kind of steers you away from having a more like anti-racist, anti-oppressive analysis of, or discussion even, like
oh, that makes sense, because then like PE is such like a disciplinarian kind of form, right?
It's
and
like
it
regimented.
it doesn't allow people to do like to dance creatively or to dance like freely, right? And then it removes, especially cultural dance, it removes a lot of the meanings behind cultural dances when it's like thrusted into like a PE form, right? Is that right?
Yeah, exactly. And when you said it, you put it great. It's like you're teaching folks to be imitators, or you're valuing their imitation of things versus teaching them to create for their own, or have a voice, or compose or choreograph something new. And so you're sort of constraining them into the past, or constraining them into doing American content or American versions of American dances or American songs, instead of like composing OPM or composing choreography that like just speaks to your own experiences, not sort of makes you only legible to a Western audience, or to like white people. So that's the thing that like I feel like it's a challenge, because there has to be a cultural shift, but there's already institutional sort of obstacles and roadblocks, because we have to think, okay, well, do we blame PE, or do we sort of question, or is there critical race studies in the Philippines? Like, is there critical race studies everywhere where we want people to have this deeper understanding of dance, or this more nuanced and complicated relationship with the moving body? I haven't really found that many American studies departments in the Philippines, and that's where you would get that kind of post-colonial critique of dance. And even when there are, like we can look at our ethnic studies departments, like how many ethnic studies departments have a consistent offering of dance classes?
That's interesting. Right? Yeah.
And so we're already kind of marginalizing one of the main ways that we articulate Filipino-ness, you know, in what are supposed to be like what we fought for, or what, you know, at Third World Liberation Front, all this like fought for our knowledge practices, and like the body as a knowledge practice is really not secured, or it doesn't have any it's not seen as valuable. And so that's one of the things that I feel like it's like my chip on my shoulder is like, man, like if we're teaching language, if we're saying like we need to learn language, then we also need to be teaching folks that like your body matters, and how you articulate your relationship to the Filipino community through your body matters.
Oh wow, that's so. Go ahead, Ren.
I have so many things that just kind of like rush into my head. Mostly comments, but also to kind of facilitate more discussion on this, because we haven't even talked about commercialization of dance, right? Like the idea of like dance like as commerce. You know, you're talking about it as dance as culture, but it just gave me like this rush of like, man, you know, the idea of art, for example, like singing, right? Do you guys remember that video? There's like a video of I think it's a Thai singer singing "Can't Live If Living Is Without You," but she can't. It's called "Can Lee." Can Lee living is without you? Because she can't say the words, right?
Yeah.
But I'm like, oh, she actually has a good voice. Like, you know, like I'm like thinking, oh, if you take away the, you know, like the voice itself is actually really good, but her pronunciation is not. And so I think you know, because of the commercialization of dance and songs, sometimes it's inevitable that it gets compartmentalized into mimicry. You know, like I think it becomes inevitable that we are TikTokers without understanding the meaning of the movement, right? Like, oh, we're gonna learn steps 1, 2, and 3 of this thing because everybody else is doing it, or you know, without understanding kind of like, oh, where are the roots of that? Not that you have to do that, but I think the, you know, another, just my thoughts about the commercialization of dance becomes that much more far removed from its roots, or removed from like the actual freedom to create. And I think that's why I kind of appreciate your Lorenzo, your ability to say, you know what, this is really a look at why we're doing this, or how our bodies can help create, and how this is much more than just dance. It is a commentary on culture and on politics. And I just sorry, it's a long comment, but I really just wanted to kind of express that we you know, I struggle with that, you know, the idea of mimicry, you know, like the idea like, am I good, or am I just imitating, right? And I think for the most part you start with imitation, and hopefully you get into self, you know, creation, and being able to create your own identity or create your own art form. But you know, I've always been a good mimic, but I've never really thought of myself as creative. I don't know who to blame that on, but
no, that's perfect. I mean, like the way that I set up the book with the zombies as the first chapter, kind of like show like, okay, this is the phenomenon. Now let's look at like you know, the hero, the robot, and the judge as these things. Like, you know, when you think you're going to perform Filipino-ness, you think Maria Clara, or you think like a particular suite. And so like for Filipinos to dance as a robot, what does it mean? You know, like, it's sort of like it's refusing that expectation of traditional folk dance.
Right.
But it's also saying something else, which is why I kind of use that example of my cousins saying the nosebleed.
Nosebleed,
as a thing, as like, wow, they're doing something there. Like they're performing something that's outside of like logic, like health logic, I guess.
Right.
Like, but it's also a critique. It's like critiquing my ability to speak English, which is the colonial.
It's affecting me, right? It's like it's physically affecting me. Your English is like giving me headaches, right? That's the whole term of it, right? Yeah.
So I was thinking like there has to be a way to talk about the times that Filipinos are not performing folk dance and they're not just assimilating,
right?
You know, because obviously there's cases for both, like. But I think there definitely there's like what you kind implying is there's cases that are like in between or outside that aren't necessarily easily understood. And so one of my purposes of this book is to kind of create more language around these things, like using the euphemism or using sort of this idea of like kind of these kinds of stereotypes that do intersect not just American empire, right? Like, because what you said is like capitalism and labor is like the 1970s, you know, like exporting Filipino bodies is the one reason why there are Filipinos everywhere, right? And so like we have to kind of really question, all right, if we understand Filipinos are great, people understand Filipinos as great dancers and that they're everywhere. So why is that a natural thing? Like, shouldn't we question that? Shouldn't we question like why we're everywhere or why that's a positive thing? And then, you know, that kind of led me to like look at, okay, so what does Filipino dancing body mean in emergent Asian countries or in Japan, you know, like where they're doing New Jack dance styles or they're in clubs or entertainers, there's like a racial and sexual politics that kind of shapes what kind of dancing they do. That's traditionally excluded when we think about Filipinos in hip hop. But I think, you know, we should be having those conversations about like beyond the world of dance TV, like arena, and thinking about Filipino labor because it's intrinsic to explain this phenomenon.
Yeah, I mean that chapter when you talk about how many Filipinos are how many Filipino laborers are exported, especially to Asia, especially to like, you know, cruises, right? As a form of entertainment. So like, I didn't realize how the numbers were so high, right? There's tons of Filipinos who are basically just recruited to work in clubs and whatnot, and places to entertain as dancers. And then I like how you kind of you talked about that, how it complicates this whole idea of you know, Filipinos as simply just mimics, or Filipinos are simply like you know, just good dancers. So I like that chapter.
Yeah, I like that because it's like it redefines what work is. Because I think that's the thing with art in general. Like there's an expectation that the person performing the art, like that it's so easy, that like it's so natural, like, right, the whole natural mimicry, natural song, natural dance, and there's like a disrespect to the actual craft of doing it, like
the sweat equity.
Yes, exactly it. The sweat equity. Like if you're looking at it in terms of like an athlete, right? Like the Los Angeles Lakers just won the championship, and they trained for forever.
God,
to be star athletes, right? They had to be athletes, and then when you are a star athlete, you achieve, and your accomplishment is, you know, like a 17th ring. But for a dancer,
Jesus.
The expectation sometimes is, I want to move. You just move around and you can do it. Anyone can do it. Like there's
give a better example than the Lakers. It reminded me of that Fresh Prince of Bel-Air episode when Will Smith thought he could do stand-up comedy with D.L. Hughley. Remember that episode? And he's like, because he was funny for one moment. And he thought he could do stand-up comedy. Anyway, better than the Lakers.
Wait, can you just kind of talk about kind of the exportation of, you know, Filipino dancers like throughout Asia, and the kind of what that means and how you write about it in the book?
Yeah, you know, this is building on a conversation in Filipino studies by, you know, Robin Rodriguez and Ana Guevara, who talk about how the Philippine government, you know, regulates and manufactures Filipinos as like the number one export, or as valuable, you know, more valuable outside than inside the Philippines. And so that has produced like this major economy based on Filipino global labor. And so for the dance way of looking at it, like I was really interested in how sometimes like all of these like in one particular case, there's a sociologist that writes about a Filipino entertainer in Japan, and even like at the level of the researcher, they sort of don't look at the dancing, or like what was the dancing that they were doing or how it was important, even though like they describe it as something that was very important to them in their training, and also a punishment, like they had to dance if they did bad on the job. And so for me, it's like really kind of reclaiming the space of like the importance of dance, and movement to these histories, the history of Filipino labor, global labor. I mean, in the Marcos era, like I talked about this in the introduction, about how the penthouse dancers, like folks that popularized locking in the 70s in the Philippines, were used, that they had license to dance. They were given permits. So kind of like we have curfews because of COVID, they were given permits to dance when everybody else was sort of restricted by curfew. And so because they were seen as folks that could attract foreign capital to invest in the Philippines. And so yeah, I think obviously when you kind of have to add like race and gender and like this like naturalized Filipino hospitality, what does it mean to like develop Asian economies like Singapore, Dubai, or Hong Kong, and with Filipino bodies that are seen as closer to Blackness or closer to American cultural fluency. I think you really kind of have to take a second look and kind of like realize like it's a lot. It's not as simple as like just auditioning and whoever is the best answer is getting it. Like there are notions of race and gender that are built into that, like the fact that they're recruiting in the Philippines in the first place, you know, like,
Yeah.
And then that's only like one half of it. Like the whole other half is like families that are being reunited by like petitions to the US or to Canada. And those dancers that have, you know, those dancers that are in the Philippines then have to like make a decision to give up their careers and kind of be demoted, and start in a space that, you know, is like known to have like anti-Asian entertainment industries, or so they're actually going from a space where they're, you know, they're champions and they're community leaders in the dance, in the Filipino and hip hop dance community, but then they have to make a decision about moving to Canada or Australia.
I like that. I like the term you coined, peticionados. I was like, oh man, because I have cousins and stuff like that and relatives who have recently immigrated to the US, but then, you know, they waited 20 years and a lot of them don't want to move here. So like, I'm glad, I don't know, you kind of put a name for that phenomenon, which is really, it's really cool. Yeah.
I have uncles that immigrated here, and you know, because their preference category changed, or it just took that long, like 22 years and now they have a grandkid. They don't want to leave their grandkid, or not. Like what kind of job are they going to start? And I think like for the group that I'm looking at, that also affected when they could compete internationally. If they had a petition, and I think this is like why I wanted to kind of connect the institutional policies that are shaped by race and gender to the dancing, because obviously, like I said, like dancing is often marginalized and seen as kind of easy. But like the petitioners, they were denied petitions because they were seen as like potential TNT, right?
Yeah.
And so like that's not fair. Like they practiced for a whole year to coach their crew to HHI, and then they were just denied because of the fact that they have a petition.
Right.
Like so for me, that was like a really kind of eye-opening discovery that like, oh, these petition statuses affect how, like, who we get to see on the international competition stage.
Right.
Like international competition space is not a vacuum, you know, it's like regulated by states and by the market. And so for me, it was kind of like really interesting to kind of tease out how you have these two kind of groups, like the dance migrants that are doing like temporary gigs in Japan or in Singapore, and then moving back to the Philippines after the end of the contract. And then the petitioners that are kind of having this other situation going on with their migration status. but both of them are like in the same hip hop community.
Yeah.
So it's like it's hard to really kind of lump everybody. And I mean, yeah, so that's why it was kind of a hard story to tell.
No, I thought it was
language
good.
about it. Yeah.
Yeah, you go into a lot of things about the book. You go through the whole Cebu jail thriller, kind of viral dance. You talk about judging competitions. I wanted to talk specifically about PCN.
Yeah, you do.
Because you're a PCN coordinator? Is that why?
Not just that. I think especially this is this Filipino American life, and I think at least our audience, this kind of hits close to home. Right. No pun intended.
Except for Mike.
Home.
Right, home.
I feel like there should be a sound effect for PCN, like your horn. Your boop, boop, boop. You have a PCN horn.
It should be a gong. Don't you have a cooling tongue behind you, Joe?
Both of you, Joe, you and Lorenzo were both coordinators.
So you analyze kind of the now kind of famous PCN from Berkeley of 2000, Home, which tried to, I guess, change the whole PCN paradigm. And what I mean by PCN paradigm is kind of the normal
8-hour long.
Okay, so PCN is a very much like a West Coast phenomenon. So, like, can you give a primer for what PCN is?
We had a show on this too, but yeah.
But for someone who hasn't listened to that show, if you're listening to this, what's a PCN?
Are you asking
primer?
Joe or Lorenzo? Or
I'm asking anybody of you who is a PCN coordinator who would like to answer.
Is in your glossary, Lorenzo?
No, I have like a endnote that said like when the first PCN for all the UCs was.
Oh, okay.
Trying to figure out. Yeah, so like, well, I know SF State had theirs in like 1976 or 5, and then Berkeley was 76, Davis was 86, Irvine was 78, UCLA was 78, Merced 2007, San Diego 91. Oh, wait, this is alphabetical. Santa Barbara was 90, and Santa Cruz was 91. Where was your PCN at, Joe?
Santa Barbara.
Oh, okay, yeah. So 90. So I think it's like important to think like, okay, yeah, it's a West Coast, predominantly West Coast phenomenon, but like when they occurred at different times, I think kind of shaped how they named it, for one. Like UCLA is called SPCN, and then what kind of activities they attached to it, or how they spoke to each community. But yeah, PCN is like a 2 to 3 hour annual production that uses Philippine folk dance, music, song, dress, theatrical drama to convey, what it means to be Filipino or Filipino American to audiences often made up of their families and friends, but usually happens in April. And I think one of the years, like 2017, there were like 19 that I could count, and they had a master PCN calendar. And so they've only grown like even more and more. They happen in churches, they happen in high schools, they happen in community centers. It's not just a collegiate thing. But yeah, they usually have a year long. Like I know for us at Berkeley, we had PCN Basics, which would be like workshops every month that teach you about the history and the theory and the practice of the dances, and bring community members from different groups like Bindle Stiff Studios in San Francisco, or a dance group to kind of educate us about issues and see how we can incorporate that in our learning about Filipino culture. Other schools have PCN classes. I think at Berkeley they had the decal program where you teach your own class as an undergrad. UCLA, I taught one with Anna Alves, who wrote her master's on PCN. And, we use like Theo's book, and we use other articles like Barbara Garland, who is also at UCLA at the Center for Southeast Asian Studies, to sort of help students see beyond the conventional PCN. And, UCLA has an archive, so they look at some of their past programs. But yeah, I feel like PCN is kind of an archive, it's a community archive, and it's a community repertoire, so it's kind of like building skills. Like I gave a talk at UCLA about this chapter, and the coordinators from Berkeley came down, like Brian Batugo, and came down. It was 2010, and they drove down to attend my talk, and I was so impressed.
Oh, wow.
And they asked a question, and I told them about the robots assembly line. They're like, and I was talking about how, it's an archive. You pass it down. You literally pass down the costumes to the next coordinator in this big plastic bin because there's no space to hold them. And they were in my apartment.
That's where they live. Yeah.
Yeah, they were in my apartment, and people rent them out sometimes. And so it's this kind of material archive as well. He's like, yeah, we use those in my dance. We use those robot pants. And so there's this really interesting, I don't know, that's kind of a...
Oh my God. That could be a book in itself if these PCN costumes could talk.
So you talk about that particular PCN and how it was basically trying to shift the traditional type of PCN, how it's run, right? And how like PCN has been kind of criticized and critiqued as being apolitical and essentialist, etc. And it's ironic because I think Dylan Rodriguez particularly looked at that PCN practice as a reason why. This is why Filipinos or Filipino Americans who participate in PCN are not political enough, right? Or are not they're detriment or they're complicit to white supremacy, etc. You kind of complicate that with your chapter. Can you talk about how dance and that use of kind of modern dance complicates those notions?
Yeah, I mean, if we think about the traditional multiculturalist like PCN, the only thing that speaks to Filipino American history is usually the skit or the drama, right? And so this PCN was really radical or innovative in terms of speaking to Filipino American history through the movement, through the dress, through the costumes. I mean, through the structure, not just through like a drama that was at the center of a bunch of like romanticized or quote unquote authentic folk dances, right? And so I think what it really was trying to do, I mean, it had like a meta critique that was really persuasive, but it wasn't all, it wasn't everybody's cup of tea. So folks that really are, lovers of tinikling or of Sinkil really want to be the Sinkil princess on their senior year. They couldn't do it. And so they couldn't get behind it. So there was a lot of people that were like, oh, this isn't going to be a show that it involves all of the community. It's not as inclusive to everybody's different wants and needs. So whenever you think about PCN, you have to think about like power and community voice and how do we create something as a collective. In terms of Dylan Rodriguez's book, like I read the chapter and I was kind of like, oh, this must come down to method, like research method. Like for me, like as a participant, like me interviewing the folks and figuring out like, Ronnie read this chapter and gave me feedback. Ronnie DeLeon, the chair of this PCN. But yeah, I think that's one of the, like, that kind of explains the discrepancy. But I think that I really wanted to dive into it because it was so formative for me. And I saw, there are other PCN veterans that became professors or in academia or in other parts of their life that, they weren't necessarily ethnic studies majors, but it had an impact on how they do their work or their community engagements in like, today, even like 20 years later. But I did want to kind of connect it to like affirmative action, colorblindness, and multiculturalism, because I saw those as embedded in the critique that they were making. Like, it wasn't just about, oh, PCNs are problematic because they reproduce the same static thing, but they were actually speaking to the racial moment in the late 90s, the removal of affirmative action and how that affected Filipinos in relationship to other groups.
Lorenzo, real quick, this is more of an insider thing. Did you perform in that in home?
Yeah, I was in the communications hip hop.
Okay. Section. I was just a viewer of that. Because I was inactive. I wasn't inactive until my junior year of college. I was a Filipino person on campus that wasn't active in the Filipino clubs. So I was like Mike.
These guys.
I know. No, but and I remember watching it, and I remember because I had seen PCNs before, and we always kind of comment on like, the length of time. I think that was the first year it was done like under 2 hours. You guys had 2 shows. There was like a matinee and an evening one maybe. I don't know if that was that year, but it was such a different thing for everyone because I think historically Cal's PCNs were just like one show at night or something like that, and it was such a different time. Yeah,
it's interesting because when you start looking across PCNs, you see like people have different kind of signatures. Like, oh, Cal is supposed to be the protest activist version,
right? And
then there's another group that's just kind of, oh yeah, like UCLA is very like Broadway. They have really skilled like original compositions, music. They have a SPCN song, that they sing at the end every year.
Wow.
And like, yeah, I mean, like I think for me, like one of the things that was clear is that as we moved into like social media, like PCNs carried less weight in terms of representation and having that like, oh, how are we going to show people what Filipino is or being Filipino is? And I think social media has kind of alleviated that, but there's still there's still a lot of room, I think, for folks to, because like skits and media, I think there's a lot of room still for folks to do. I mean, we're kind of moving into more in interesting conversations around appropriation and capital I indigeneity in PCNs, and like I'm sure you all have had Jojo on the show before from Ikat Voices.
Yeah, not.
Okay,
we know him.
We know
of him. Yeah,
definitely a great resource in Ikat Voices. But I feel like we've just scratched the surface about how like we almost at like we need a PCN critique 2.0. Like like we haven't really like dealt with ableism or beyond the American framework, or like just even I don't know. But one thing I did find, like when I went to Chicago, they have Battle of the Bamboo, which is like they make their own dances based off of myths and legends. So there's all these other models that I think are outside of our California purview or like view. Like in Rutgers, they had this thing called Battle of the Barrios. Like when I was at Cornell, like one of my students was like involved in it, and she wrote a paper on it. I was like astounded. I was like, whoa, this is totally different from PCN.
I feel like you've brought that up, Joe, but what's the difference of what is Battle of the Barrios? Like, what's that setup?
I'm not an expert on it, but I think it's much more theatrical. Like it's more theatrical, and there's not like defined suites and defined spaces for the dance. It's much more of a play based. I don't know. Like I'm speaking.
Is there an actual battle between schools, or is it a battle amongst?
So this is the thing. It's a competition between schools, and same with Battle of the Bamboo in Chicago. It's a competition between schools in the Midwest, and they come with a dance that they prepared that they've been working on, and it could be something that they all have different kind of methods of choreography. But also in Texas A&M has something else. They have what is it called? Good Phil and Isang Mahal. And then in UH, they have Drama Fest and Song Fest. And so those are actually associated with the Ilocano student organization and the Filipino student organization, or Katipunan. And so there's like, to be part of that show, you have to be a member of the class, or you're typically a member of the class. So I feel like there's like way more beyond PCN that like we could like look at and see like, oh, like what are the other ways that we could do it? I know SPCN and UCLA, they did a festival version where it was like booths, and like what was traditionally like in a linear time of 2 hours was just all at once in different booths. And there was like a tour guide or a tour or something. And so like home isn't the only alternative. So I feel like part of me, like, I don't want to recreate this kind of, this is the way that it should be thing. And, but I did want to get it down in terms of relating it to that moment of post-affirmative action.
So the chapter documents how home was controversial in that it didn't conform to the traditional theatrical structure of a narrative play that drops in different dance suites
and it
throughout
didn't
the
have
2
the
actors.
the dual Philippine and American national
American,
anthem. It didn't have, the skit, the Filipino American skit. Like it was a bunch of vignettes that were
yeah.
all like, there was like a film as well.
Yeah.
Like, it's just
Yeah.
kind of played with form and structure, but like my focus really is on the assembly line dance, because
Mhm.
it kind of really symbolized that, like, why multiculturalism is a problem and why colorblindness is a problem. And so that for me was really kind of interesting, because it shows why being Filipino is seen as something that's not quite easy to understand.
Right.
Yeah. And then I feel like in the chapter, the general critiques, or maybe it's just in general, like the critiques for PCN have been like, well, the dances aren't necessarily traditional. Like, what are you trying to evoke? It's like mimicry. Why does PCN like exist in that format? And I don't know. Personally, I always was like, I'm not coming to PCN as an audience member or as a participant thinking that I am performing accurate cultural dance, because like as a participant, I never thought of it that way. Even though I had coordinators who were hella serious and were like, no, you have to kibbut like this. No, you have to use your janggai like this. Like they were strict, but they cared about the form. Right. And I don't necessarily know if they cared about the form for cultural accuracy or they cared about the form from like a dance choreography perspective, because they wanted it to look like the picture that they had in their mind. Yeah. So that's interesting, because now what you're saying is that the other critiques is like the ableist part to it, like RPCNZ, like, and then other conversations, the 2.0, the indigeneity part of it. Is that going to be your second book? Are you going to tackle that now?
Yeah, I have thought about it. Like when I was at UCLA, there were like several other, they called it CNs, culture nights. So like Taiwanese culture night, Korean culture night, Chinese student culture night, and they all had a modern suite, like a quote unquote modern suite too. So like there were Korean b-boys that were like portraying Korean agricultural laborers in Hawaii at the Korean culture night that I saw, and I was like, what? That's kind of like home, like. Like I feel like, yeah, like I would love to continue doing research and connecting culture nights across different ethnic groups, but also, like there are other parallels, right? Like there's a Black Greek community has step shows. Hawaii clubs have luau's. Like if we could think of like I used to think about this, like, oh, can you imagine a Hawaii club luau without any Hawaiian dance? That's like basically what home was. It was like kind of this, like take out all the tradition, quote unquote tradition, and kind of try to make something new. And I feel like it's an interesting experiment. It might not be as sustainable over the long term, but it definitely provokes kind of a conversation about what works for your community and what doesn't. And you should be feel like cultivating the agency to say no to some forms of tradition or some value systems that might be outdated or not as relevant. I think that's kind of important in our community.
I have a quick Lorenzo story, and he doesn't know this. This is a quick one, but I think you choreographed. Is it Dream, American Dream? Is that in Journeys? Where it was like a dream sequence of like, it's almost like a what do you call this? A Broadway themed, and someone is going through a dream sequence, and people were like dancing in the background, like what America was supposed to be about. Anyway, this is more about the dance, because I was part of that thing, and I don't really know how to dance. I like to dance in like a club or something, but I just remembered you there, because you were showing us what we were trying to convey in a very dance form. Like it's supposed to look like this, right? And I think it's the very first time I've ever experienced like a what what do you call this? A non-debut cha-cha choreography to a dance from someone that kind of wanted to convey what it's supposed to look like. And I wanted to share that because if you guys don't know Lorenzo, he's tall. And when he came in and it said, this is, I want you guys to know what my vision for this choreography is. And, none of us could execute it the way he did, of course, because a lot of us were not trained dancers. And a lot of us were like, performing in this PCN and we could move, but we weren't trained dancers. But I totally appreciated that from a participant in this thing to know more about the dance aspect of it. We knew the story, but it was the scene where people were doing what do you call it? We're jumping up in the air and doing splits in the air. I don't know if you still remember that, but there was background dancing of us in the background because it was supposed to be a dream sequence of America. And I just remember that because I realized, I'm like, oh shit, Lorenzo is like intense, and he has like he's good at this craft. And of course, I knew you were in Dance Junta, and I think you were in part of movement. So, but I wanted to kind of wrap this up by asking you this, and I totally appreciated that. I remember you from that before we became kind of closer, outside of like PCN, right? But what has your relationship with dance how has it changed from when you were in school doing choreography then, writing the book, to now? Has it evolved? Has it changed? And what does that look like? How has your relationship with choreography or dance changed?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think, to be honest, when I signed up for grad school, I didn't realize there was so much writing. And so like, there's this whole thing of like, how to dance writing, or how to write about dance, and how to put dance in your writing, because it's already a translation of something into another medium. And I think for me, like, it's been a lot of the learning or the growth pains of being in academia or trying to teach others is kind of learning how to let dance take a hold of your authorial voice. And so I tried to do that with each of the chapters, and have, be-girling components, did like help transition between the different sections of the migration chapter, or the thriller choreography kind of informs each of the analyses that I'm making in the thriller in the zombie chapter. And so like, for me, it's like finding your creative voice again, and rediscovering it in a new way is sort of my that's like my jam with dance, right? And so like, I think with that, like, it's not necessarily an easy thing, like I think about like some colleagues that are in other practices, like, when I teach dance, like, you're sort of expected to choreograph something new every week. But like, when someone is like an English professor, they don't necessarily have to create a short story every week to teach, or like a historian doesn't have to make history, And I think to like my mentor, like Tommy DeFrance, like told me like, yeah, in order to get jobs, like dance scholars have to take off their shoes. I mean, it's not the same for hip hop, but there's something to be said that like there's labor that the body. I mean, I think this is what kind of getting at what your question is asking, like, how do you deal with the double labor of the body, and also like being in certain positions where you have to teach this kind of thing, or write about this kind of thing, or research this kind of thing. And I think about like sociology, right? They don't have to make society, but if you're a dance scholar, you have to make dance, and people are expecting you to be like versed in it. And I think like some of it is kind of making peace with that and finding creative ways around it, and kind of building your fanny pack of tools, of things to do, because that's one of the things. I think it's like, it's constantly going to change. Like, hip hop might not be hip hop anymore. It might be whatever the next cultural juggernaut is. And so we have to kind of continue to change with it, I think.
Cool.
Sorry, I had just one quick question.
You're like Columbo, Joe.
Sorry, stupid. Is Bruno Mars a cultural appropriator?
Whoa.
This is like a whole nother episode.
Well, no. What I'm saying is like this is kind of what the questions that you tackle in your book, right?
Yeah.
And you kind of complicate these things.
Yeah, I mean, I think that for me, I don't really know enough about the particular like evidence or data that I think there was a conversation about him being canceled, and then other folks coming in and saying, well, what is he supposed to perform or what is he supposed to do? And I feel like as long as the conversation kind of keeps coming back to like the material realities and the you know institutions, and doesn't stay in the kind of surface conversations of like that's appropriation, that's not appropriation. Like that's one of the things that I hope with this book is to kind of like point at, oh, like let's think about how we're differently positioned in relationship to the state, and not just the US state, but also the Philippine state. Or you know, like I feel like that's sort of more interesting to me. But you know, that's just me.
That's a perfect answer, because I think that that kind of relates to kind of where your arguments are in the book. Yeah.
Well, Dr. Lorenzo Barrio, thank you so much for joining us. This was totally awesome. Just having a chance to really sit down and talk to you about your book. So for our audience out there, check out Choreographing in Color. Available, we'll link it to our blog and when we release this. But Lorenzo, how can people find you? Are you on social media? Do you do that kind of stuff? Can people connect with you some way, somehow?
Yeah, you can check out more about the book and about some of the other things that I'm up to at choreographingincolor.com.
Awesome.
Perfect.
But this is great. Thank you so much. Thank you for reminiscing with me as well through our PCN days. So this was great. And for Joe.
I'll have to look for the video.
Man. I don't even remember what video you're talking about, but was it the acting?
I think you were acting. I think you were the patriarch.
No, I don't know about that, Joe.
Oh man.
No, I had an acting slot being a brother.
You were in choir. You were in choir too. I remember that.
I think about everything. Anyway,
we need like Joe's clip of his PCN.
No,
we need Elaine's performances from all the PCN she's been
Battle of the PCN clips.
Anyway.
Battle.
I don't know where any of that is, and I hope it's lost forever.
I mean, I have my videotapes to salute to the graduates from Oxnard. I mean, you know.
There you go. It's there.
Although all we have to do is ask AJ Calamai, because he probably has access.
He probably has, yeah. Or Florante Banez.
Baha'i video edited all our PCNs.
Jeez. All right. Well, thank you everybody for listening. We'll catch you in the next episode, and thank you again to Lorenzo for spending the hour with us.
Thank you.
This Filipino American Life is produced by Michael Nailat. Our intro and outro music is by Roger Habon, aka 10.4 Raj. Resident reality checker Girly Collado, legal advisor Rianne Fajardo, and graphic design by Vincent Collyer.